here in Bend,
No,
we got a
should
few
do it.
movie theaters open, and it's summer movie season.
Woo! Summer movie season. Yeah.
I like movies in the summer because air conditioning rules.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
it's been very gratifying to have folks come into Tin Pan and say, "Oh, thank gosh, you have air conditioning." I'm like,
yeah.
It
yes,
feels so
this
good
is
in
what
here.
the movies are about. It's
Yeah.
the air conditioning.
Yeah.
It really is.
Remember?
So, welcome everybody.
However, it's cold as balls in here in the winter. So
Hey, people still like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to Tin Pan Podcast, recorded at a Tin Pan Theater from Tin Pan Theater and BendFilm. My name is Todd Leiser.
Jared Rossick.
And I am Chick on Flick, Julie Furness.
Yeah, you are.
Oh yeah, our lovely Julie Furness, always getting those Instagram hits.
Follow me on Instagram. I do reviews, pictures,
Yeah.
shares, and I follow lots of celebrities.
Salacious.
Yes.
Did you mean Chick on Flick to sound mildly dirty? Because it sounds a little dirty.
Well, I really wasn't, because that was a long time ago I came up with that.
Yeah.
And then I was going to change it to Movie Maven
Ooh.
because
That's cool.
Bend Lifestyle called me Movie Maven when I do, when I write for them.
Right.
But there's a lot of movie mavens.
There are.
So,
No, Chick on Flick
unfortunately.
sounds pretty unique. So
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
I
a
like it.
good
I like it
Instagram
a lot.
So
handle. Hey Jared, you also write for the source, right?
I do.
I'm just saying what we all do.
For now. Until Julie takes my job.
mhm.
Wonderful.
She's giving me
No,
this.
I've got bigger plans for you, buddy.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I've
get
got bigger
murdered.
plans for you.
If this is the last podcast I ever do, it's because Julie Furness murdered me.
Maybe. Today, hey, we're talking about summer movies, but we're kind of doing a little more specific than just summer movie season. We want to talk about our series that are playing in Tin Pan Alley this summer because last summer was such a success because it had to be, because that was the only way that we could play movies last summer.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
But yeah,
This is weird. I mean,
We're continuing the alleyway movies. Obviously, we've been doing it pretty much this whole year. There's been alley movies, but we're bringing back specifically the summer nostalgia movies, those 80s classics. And we're also going to talk about a little bit what's playing in the theater as well inside Tin Pan.
Yeah. So last year, it was almost like we were forced to start a drive-in
Yeah.
because it was like
Adaptation is the mother of necessity.
it is, and we were closed. Regal was closed. McMinimans was closed. Everything was closed.
Yeah.
And we tried to open for a little bit, and that was weird. We played Donnie Darko because we were like, why not?
Yeah, we did get a run of what's the Australian movie with Ben Mendelsohn?
Sweet Tooth?
What's Little Fish? No, Sweet Fish. Little
Sweet. About the
the girl with
dying
cancer.
girl.
Yeah.
Last year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
last
came
summer.
and saw it here before I worked here.
Baby Teeth.
Baby. Yes.
Okay, I was like, Sweet Tooth? That is
Yeah.
a current series on Netflix.
Yeah.
The thing is, I really like that movie too. So I feel
so
bad
good.
about forgetting that movie.
That was
Yeah,
your
that was-
last film that you came and saw.
Mhm.
Then we closed, and then we reopened for a little bit, and then we quickly closed again.
Was that the last movie you guys showed in here
Yeah.
before closing?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
that. We also
Yeah.
played the documentary about civil rights leader who passed away right
Good
around
Trouble.
the same.
Like Good Trouble with John Lewis.
John Lewis. There we
yeah.
go.
And so the drive-in, which took, that was a logistical nightmare, but we did it. And we were putting together, this kind of list of movies that we were showing for the drive-in, and that was eclectic, but also what we did in the alley, I think, was a little more special.
So yeah,
And-
we had a lot of themes and trying to just bring out stuff that folks we wanted people to enjoy, having beers and drink and having food in the alleyway, and then also realize, oh, there's something that's fun and interesting and kind of out there that's playing on the screen.
Absolutely.
Up in front of us.
Yeah, and like Jurassic Park, that is a no-brainer for a drive-in.
Yeah,
That's a
100%.
no-brainer. I was there. It was fun. Last Blockbuster opened it, and that was necessary. But in the alley, it was just like more intimate. And even we did 2 nights of Dirty Dancing, I think.
Oh
and
yeah, because it was a big hit. So
big
we're gonna bring
hit.
that again.
Yeah, totally. And then
We also do like a bunch of like classic music documentaries, like Stop Making Sense.
we did play around a little bit with our programming, but we
Definitely.
did get very nostalgic.
Yeah,
And
and that was really the thing we really realized more than anything. Like we wanted to play movies that we knew folks would want to come out to see as a big group. And so like, what are those films from? I think we pretty much just did 80s films. I don't know if we did any movies from the early 90s, but we might have. But it was all sort of that same same area.
Yeah. And then at the end there, we did Stand By Me. That's always at an end of the summer
Totally.
film.
Yeah, and especially as an Oregon art house cinema, you kind of got to always play, one of the classic Oregon set canon films.
Right,
Yep.
Right.
And that along with Goonies, which is playing tonight, but
Yep.
it
Goonies.
will already pass by the time this episode comes out, and it's already sold out.
And it's already
so.
sold out.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone who came and bought the tickets had a good time.
Had a great time. What a night. That was so fun.
It was just the best night we've ever had. Finale, I would say. Easily.
Yeah, man. If you didn't come, oh man, you missed
Oh
out.
my god.
Oh boy. Goonies.
Goonies. Yeah.
I mean,
Everybody keeps trying to tell me that the Goonies does not age well. And I rewatched it again. Like that is like it the opinion on it swung from being like a classic to like this movie sucks if you try to watch it not as a kid. And I rewatched it like 6 months ago and absolutely loved it again.
Okay.
So
I mean, maybe that argument is only that if you hadn't seen it as a kid,
like
and
if you didn't grow up with it.
like if you only watched it as an
Okay.
adult, maybe that's what it's sort of
Okay.
getting at.
so when did you see it first in your lifetime?
8 or 9 years old, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the
And
same.
I remember.
Were you already living here in Oregon, or
I would have been in Northern California at the
still?
time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember I watched that on a weekend trip in Tahoe. I don't know why that was relevant, but
I think the
You were
first,
not an Oregonian, though. That's the point.
yeah,
Yes.
but
Okay.
because my parents are born and raised Oregonians, I don't think I even quite realized there was an Oregon set movie. Maybe when I watched it, but
Okay.
once I learned later, I was like, oh yeah, my family's Oregonians.
Okay.
and
Have you been to Ashland?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Astoria.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay.
just once.
Okay.
'Cause
All right.
it's
So
kind of off the beaten track.
it is off the beach. Is not a beach town. A
No,
lot of
it's really
people
not. Yeah.
think that it's not, but it's wet and it's spooky and it's foggy and it's the whole like. I mean, Richard Donner, like he took those kids.
Also, R.I.P.
and- yeah,
Richard Donner.
yeah. Rest in peace.
I didn't know he was that old. Like I thought he just directed a movie a year or two ago, but he was 91.
He was
91.
he was old.
Okay.
Not
But
quite Clint Eastwood old, but
No. Yeah. Clint Eastwood's
Actually-
still directing movies
Yeah.
in his 90s, right?
actually, I think Clint Eastwood might be like a year younger.
Oh, okay. So he's only 90.
Yeah, I know,
okay.
right?
Okay.
okay, so I remember going to the drive-in with my family and seeing E.T. Okay, like that to me, I don't even ever want to watch Inside again because I've seen it inside many times.
Right.
But I only want to see that at a drive-in ever.
That's absolutely
It's I assume it's all about having the atmosphere of the audience
Yes,
there.
outside under the stars, like there's something about watching ET outside or in your car. For me, that is a must
Mm-hmm.
summer outside movie.
I mean, it's definitely a movie because E.T. is a part of a canon of kid adventure movies. There's something about those kind of movies often being set like during the summer, like when you're at home, break from school, and so I wonder if that feeling of like being outside, riding your bikes around town, like it almost helps the movie to be outside when
Right.
watching that movie.
Because I
Yeah.
mean, I grew up in the '80s. Jared grew up in the '80s. That's what we did.
Mhm.
We rode around town on our bikes. No helmets, by the way.
No.
0 helmets. We climbed trees.
Yeah.
We drank water out of the hose. And we were on adventures. I
But-
mean, we really were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the time I was growing up in the 90s, I was still trying to do those things, but there were authoritative figures saying, "No, that's not safe now. You
That's
can't
not
do that
safe.
anymore."
No, it's
What do you
absolutely
think you're
not
doing?
safe.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
grew up in a town of about 700 people,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no swimming pool, and so we had to swim in irrigation ditches, And there was one called the washing machine where you would hop in the ditch and it would take you down about a mile,
Boy.
spin you around in a circle, and then suck you underwater and spit you out again. And I will always remember being 9 or 10 years old and being obsessed with the movie Stand By Me.
Yeah.
And one day getting spat out from the washing machine and climbing out of the irrigation ditch and being covered in
leeches. Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
And I was like, I wasn't that scared because I was like, had the Stand By Me moment.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of fun for
Well,
me. I don't know.
I went to college in 2 different cities, one San Antonio and also Denton, Texas. And Henry Thomas is from San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
So like during college, I would like be at a restaurant and I'd see him and I'd like on a date or something, and I'd be like, oh my God.
Right,
and then and he was also in a band. So like
Like a local San Antonio band?
Yes.
Nice. Okay.
And I would see him too, and I just was like, I cannot believe I am 20 feet from,
Right.
Yeah.
from Elliot. And I just, so the nostalgia goes on and on and on
Totally.
for me.
Did you go see the re-edit of E.T. in the theater?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Did you?
I did not.
Okay. So you like
Was this one of the Tobey Maguire or not? No, Topher Grace was doing a bunch of edits. This wasn't him.
this was actually Steven Spielberg
Re-edit.
re-edited the
Director.
film. Like he fixed some of the special effects. But the big thing that made everybody so mad was when they're being chased by the FBI or the cops or whatever. The cops in the original had guns in their hand, and they turned them into walkie-talkies.
Okay.
That's right. I remember the South Park episode.
Yeah. And I remember being like, why does that look different? So I think I was like probably 13 or 14 when it came out,
Yeah.
the remake.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
It was
man.
Not
Well,
yeah,
we should add Jurassic Park to the list.
I'll make this
Because
like-
I'm about to add another one it's not nostalgia, but Jurassic Park, that's just one that I think it's big.
It's a fulcrum point for an entire generation.
Steven Spielberg. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I was 16 when that hit theaters, and that like changed my relationship to like. I don't think I'd ever been that excited watching the movie in a movie theater.
And the first time you see those dinosaurs, you
it's
cry.
it's literally it's a game. It was a game changer.
Totally.
Completely.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was just a little too young to have seen it in theaters, but my brother, who's 4 years older than me, it was his first movie in movie theaters, and so when that movie came out in '93, I believe my brother was 9 years old.
Okay.
And my dad still talks about how it was probably the most excited he'd ever seen my brother for a movie. Going
Yeah.
to that.
Oh my gosh.
And it's definitely the movie that I've said multiple times I've probably seen more than any other movie, and
yeah.
I only react emotionally to Jurassic Park.
Okay.
I can't be critical about that.
Yeah, and
I love it so much.
also
Is it
it has a lot to do with the soundtrack too. So when you hear the soundtrack has a lot to do with that physical
John
emotion.
Williams, yeah.
I know, he gets you every time. There was a program when I lived in Austin, and I used to go to Alamo Draft House a lot. They did, a ton of summer programming. One of the things they did was they would go to the house where Texas Chainsaw Massacre was shot, and they would show the film there. Okay, so
that's so cool.
no, it's a freaking drive. Okay, like it is out in the middle of nowhere, so it's
Right.
a 2-hour drive. But the other cool thing they did was go to the lake, Travis Lake there, and everybody got on floaties, and they had a huge projection of Jaws. So Jaws, okay, yeah. Now you are feeling super sick by the end of that movie because the water's pretty choppy, so it's pretty bad. But that I thought, man, could we do that on the Deschutes?
Oh man,
Maybe in Mirror Pond. Oh, but it's gross in Mirror
Drake,
Pond.
maybe
Yeah.
down by Drake.
Yeah.
So where everybody maybe docks, but still, I mean, there are rivers. It's not rapid, but there's just no way. You'd have to kind of float. But we could just show it, and then maybe floaters by could just
because I mean,
Just float by the movie.
like, damn it, why am I there? Why am I not there?
Get in the car and like drive back to the beginning and float by it
Yeah,
again.
yep. But Jaws is summer nostalgia.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is canonically the first summer blockbuster.
Mhm.
Like it invented the language of. But beyond just the film itself, the fact that it was the first big hit and created the idea of the summer season, of the summer movie season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it would blockbusters take their name because lines were busting around the block for that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that I want to touch on is, and we don't have to dive into this too much, but when we're talking about these movies that we're gonna play in the summer, like Goonies already happened, but we're also gonna do Dirty Dancing, Stand by Me, and E.T. All of these movies are movies that are made in the 80s, and sometimes they're not set in the 80s, but they're set in the 50s because they were specifically made by a generation who was sort of looking back and being nostalgic.
Yep.
And now, in our current day, a lot of the generation that watched these movies as kids are now filmmakers themselves and are making movies about 80s nostalgia in the same vein. So the biggest example is like Stranger Things or Super 8 is the other one. And the It adaptation, which is specifically like that. That's an interesting choice because the book is that the adults are in the 80s and the kids are in the 50s, but the movie adaptation sets the adults modern day and the kids in the 80s. And so like it's specifically just like, oh, this nostalgia for the 80s is the same nostalgia that like we used to have for the 50s essentially.
50s and 60s, yeah.
So I'm thinking to myself, like, are we at some point, is Tin Pan going to be showing these movies like, I don't know, Super 8 and stuff or Stranger Things?
I know. It's weird because we don't have that nostalgia for the 50s, but if I had a conversation with my mom, she would tell me all about that, like the 50s growing up. I mean,
because in this list, Stand By Me is the one that like we have that's in the 50s, but again, it's made from that 80s perspective, and so much of it is that Stephen King influence. When Stand By Me and It are both Stephen King
and I would say early 60s too. So like American Graffiti, that's a good one to kind of add to the list. There's a lot of, I mean, the late 50s, early 60s melded together pretty until the war started. So like I think for a lot of baby boomers, like the 50s is their childhood and the 60s is their teenage years and early 20s. Yeah, absolutely, which was pretty tumultuous in the U.S. So Stand By Me, though, that is, like I said, end of the summer. That has to show. Drive-in, alleyway, inside, I don't care. Got to see it every summer. Yeah. And I when after I got a divorce and moved to Oregon, I was gonna move back to LA, and I stayed here, but I was absolutely gonna go back and marry Corey Feldman. I know that's weird, I know, but I really love him, and I was like, I'm gonna marry him. So totally. I'm gonna marry him just because of those movies.
Yeah. I think for me, honestly, growing up, if you had asked me who do you think the coolest movie character in the world is, I would have said Edgar and Allan Frog from The Lost Boys. Easily, I would have said the Frog Brothers, without question. And I never would have expected Corey Feldman to be the one that became more normal, and Corey Haim to be the one that...
I know, and when I think about Corey Haim and River Phoenix, by the way, because I get really, really sad. Yeah. Really sad, and I don't think they should have... The two Coreys, I think that ruined him. I think that show, it was a reality show.
Yeah, I remember.
And that
did he die during the filming of that, or like basically, right after?
Basically, which really upset me. Okay. But Corey Feldman then got weird. Then I was like, oh no, we're getting divorced. But but if you look at his IMDb profile now, he's got some stuff going on. Yeah. He's got this documentary out right now that's kind of all telling of...
Yeah, it's supposed to be super whistleblowing.
Yeah, so I'm afraid. But Corey Feldman, Corey Haim, River Phoenix. By the way, Lost Boys, we should show that next year. Yeah, for sure. That fits exactly. I know we talked about it last year, but there was something with the licensing. I don't know. There was something we couldn't get. Like that. So.
Did you ever see the Lost Boys 2 or 3?
No.
It follows the Frog Brothers.
Actually, yes, I saw Lost Boys 2. Yes, I did.
The Lost. It's called Lost Boys.
The Tribe. The Tribe. Yes, the Tribe. Oh God. Goodness. I'm gonna add one to the list that is not nostalgia, but it's becoming nostalgia for me. I have to watch Mad Max every year.
Oh,
the OG one or Fury Road?
No, Fury Road.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. I'm adding that to the list, and I think that is, we talked about this, most rewatchable.
It's
summer, and it's a summer film.
I don't know that I will ever get tired of watching it. Like I feel like that movie is infinitely rewatchable on a level that I don't know many movies are.
It's a movie that like you realize that even not having watched it a couple of times, like it's just a movie you keep thinking about, and every time you think about it, you're like, I want to watch it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wait a year. And I'm like, because I think it's like summer, it's like hot, it's like, you know.
You want to feel like a road warrior.
I want to feel it, and I wanted to show it at the drive-in. I wanted people to show up in crazy cars, you know,
blowing flamethrowers.
Oh, totally! I would have totally, I wanted a flamethrower to come.
I don't know if you guys saw much of the Freedom Ride, but I saw the craziest thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
Go for it.
The very front of the Freedom Ride, where it was like it was like a Mad Max contraption of two people like riding a bike that was connected to this giant, like almost like a Spartacus style, like a wagon in the back with a drummer with a full drum kit in it.
Hell yeah!
So it was literally like going down the road, and it was one. I was like, "Wow, that is a thing I have never seen before."
I've been to Burning Man, so there's just so much fire out there. Right, and I'm like, I'm a fire sign, so I'm very. I don't know. I just the whole like, and then I watched the way it was shot, and like I just, I love that movie. I have a friend who walked out in the first 30 minutes because it was too violent.
I have some friends who like they just like don't like. I have a friend who action movies literally put her to sleep, and she said like she watched Fear Road and she just like took a nap. I was like, you know what, I can't. There's nothing I can do that will convince you like
we're not friends
this
anymore.
Is just your general disposition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I there's still like I feel like for the rest of my life there's lines from that movie that I will use in my daily life. Like anytime I'm having a good poop and my cat comes in and my cat like starts watching me poop, I look at my cat and I go, "Witness me!" I'm awaited. And my cat's always like, why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, no, it's hilarious. Don't you get it? And my cat's like, no, I don't get it. And walks out.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Gosh, I love that movie. I'm gonna have to go home and watch it now.
I know.
No, I think for Tim's go away brunch, we're gonna watch it.
Ooh,
here,
nice.
So,
okay. That's a great idea.
Okay. Any last thoughts on these kind of movies that we play or that we're probably going to play every summer at Tin Pan or the Drive-In, these sort of like 80s classics, these summer nostalgia movies that we bring out. Julie was mentioning, some favorites that we might bring in the future, just personal favorites of herself.
I think next year we are going to start with Lost Boys.
Nice.
Okay.
Jared, would that be like one of your personal favorites of like a nostalgia summer movie?
For me, I would just like to show the films of Charlie Kaufman. Because to me, like I was 19 when Being John Malkovich came out, and that was the same year as Three Kings, and like those movies to me.
Don't get me started on that year.
Okay. See, now you're opening a rabbit. Now you're going down a rabbit hole.
I won't do it.
Do not start with 1999.
Yeah.
Do not start. Because we will that is a film festival for another time, and we'll do it inside.
Yeah.
And we'll,
one thing I do think that's interesting to think about, and I'm curious to like see this happen in the future, is what we were talking about how in the 80s when Stand By Me came out, and that movie was nostalgic for the 50s. My generation, we don't really have that nostalgia. Our kids really aren't going to have that nostalgia. So
I have it for the 80s.
No. I'm talking about for the 50s in particular. So
my point was that like the 50s is only nostalgia for people who grew up or who are adults in the 80s. So the 80s are nostalgia for people who are growing or adults now or adults in the last 10 years.
Right.
So like the only thing you can say of like kids who are growing up now, they might be nostalgia for like maybe the 2000s or the 2010s.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is like, are we going to hit a point where literally there's just no 50s nostalgia anymore? Like, is that going to go away forever?
It will eventually go away.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, because eventually no one's going to be alive who remembers the 50s anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
really.
like I think Dune is a fascinating idea because she was born in 1999, I think,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 98, but her nostalgia is fully like 1984 to 1988, and she has no connection to that time period
so it's
whatsoever.
not. So it's not nostalgia for her. It's preference.
It's preference.
Okay, it's
okay.
preference.
Okay.
It's nostalgia for me because I was born in 1976
Right.
and I grew up in the 80s. So I watched those films fresh off the reel.
Totally.
So
It's nostalgia for me.
Okay.
It's preference for her.
So it's
okay?
only nostalgia if you
Lived it.
experienced it.
Absolutely.
Lived it? Okay.
That's the definition of nostalgia.
Okay.
Okay, so preference, for a type of film genre or time period. It's the same thing.
So something that's sort of like interesting to me thinking about this, like the fact that so I was born in 1990, so growing up in the as a kid in the 90s, there was a lot of media that was still sort of holding over from the late 80s.
Right.
Like there was a lot of just the aesthetic of the culture and media from the late 80s was still pretty present in through the 90s. So like I think of just like those early 16-bit games from like Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Even though those like consoles came out in the late 80s, or I think I'm embarrassed that I can't remember when those consoles came out because I usually know that stuff. But I feel like I have a lot of it. I have a lot of nostalgia for late 80s media because it was still held up as so culturally important even through like the mid 90s, which is kind of strange. Yeah, even though I would have been super young when that stuff was coming out.
Yeah, and then later, I'm sure as you started watching movies and more movies, and I mean, you would have watched stuff from the 80s probably pretty early on. So you had that going on. And then as you went to film school and more, you probably rewatched those, and then you were like, oh, I get it. Yeah. Because I talked to kids your age, 30s, totally. Early 30s, whatever, and they're like, I wish I grew up in the 80s. I so wish I grew up in the 80s. They won't get it. And I'm telling you, you don't get it until you lived it.
Yeah.
Right.
And like that's what I'm saying, like riding your bikes in the street at night, with no helmets, and like just those movies. When Stranger Things came out, I mean, to me, I was like, oh my God, like my heart just melted. Yeah. Because they really do capture the 80s.
So here's an interesting question. How does like a filmmaker in 2021 make a film or a TV show that's nostalgic for a specific time period that feels authentic without it feeling like a cash grab trying to get that nostalgia money?
Oh, I got you. I got you right here. It's that quote that Bong Joon-ho said at the Oscars when he was quoting Martin Scorsese when he said, "The personal is the most universal."
Bam.
You just you steep that story in your exact like the filmmaker's own personal experiences, and you make that story about like the specific things that they went through, and like
because it takes the writer to write it, and then it takes the director and the DP to for the colors, the way of the film, like
the aesthetic,
what's the Ben Affleck film Argo?
Yes.
Okay, so think of Argo, how Argo was shot, with the colors, the graininess, all of that, like, and you have to get into the time period.
Yeah,
it's not easy to get your mind into the time period.
Because really,
unless it's done right.
If the story's good, it kind of doesn't matter when it's set. Like you could set like a good personal experience story like in any time period, and if you are setting it, in say in the 80s, that could in a way that could be seen as a cash grab, as long as those the character drama and the character development is genuine, and you kind of like get enough details of the time period right. That's kind of like that.
I agree,
right.
And I'm sorry, I'm not nostalgic for a lot between 1990 and 1998. I'm not.
Oh yeah,
it was a hard time for me. I was like in high school, then college, and that was an awkward time. And I was in film school, but I didn't watch anything fresh off the reel then. It was all old. I mean, I had a classic horror film that was everything pre-1960 that was in black and white. I fell asleep every time because it was at 6:00 at night.
Right.
And then everything was, art of film. None of it. None of it.
I'm very curious to see, because I was in grad school essentially from like 2012 through 2015, and that was when I was most depressed and not getting a lot of media. So I'm curious about like when a movie is set during like the early 2010s from like 2012 through 2016 maybe.
Right.
Is it gonna just like remind me of like
No,
that's when I was sad?
because there's so many stories that haven't been told yet.
True.
Right.
And I'm telling you right now, we're still going to go back in time. There are so many stories that haven't been told. Books that haven't been optioned yet. Original stories. I mean, there are so many stories. They will be uncovered because Americans are about preserving the past.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And really, I mean, really. So we're not done yet. We're not done with the 80s. We're not done with the 70s. We're not done. But sorry, the 90s, I just don't like you. I didn't like your music.
Oh man.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't like your music. I did the grunge thing. I did the hip hop. I did all of it, and I look back and I cringe.
All of that hit my young prepubescent brain when like, it was perfect. So like it just.
I know.
Yeah.
I was
I love you.
14 when Kurt Cobain killed himself, which is like literally you cannot.
You were 14.
That was like the age.
Yeah, I was graduating from high school.
Yeah, so it was like to me when I see stuff about the grunge era, it like if I hear a Pearl Jam song on the radio, I like smell my high school life.
Yeah,
like
I know. I do
hard,
too. I do too.
You know?
And I think about the plaid that I wore, and like
I was a senior in high school. When Columbine happened.
Oh man.
And so it was literally overnight. It was you go home from school and everything's normal to Monday at school. There's metal detectors.
Everything changed in the 90s in a weird,
in a bad way.
Yeah,
totally.
You know?
And then to top it all off, 9/11 happened.
And everything, movies and music reflected that. Really,
right?
I mean,
right.
they did.
Yeah.
Like hip hop was so against the grain, and grunge was so, and it's like, I mean, even watching there's so many documentaries on Kurt Cobain.
Right,
There's a ton, and they're well done.
Yeah.
But it made me really angry.
Right.
It made me really angry because I liked him, and I liked Nirvana, and I wanted to, but it made me angry.
Yeah. It's
He did some bad stuff.
Yeah. Do you think Courtney killed him?
No.
You don't? How about you?
How
about you, Foxy?
He had a stomach. He had an ulceritis. Like he had a really, really bad stomach problem.
Yeah, like he was in pain all the time.
24/7 pain, and nothing helped.
Yeah.
And he was done.
I mean, heroin helped.
Heroin helped temporarily.
Yeah.
But he had an autoimmune disease,
Right.
and then mental illness,
Right.
but he was such a good musician.
Right.
I hope this all convinces everyone to come out to our 80s nostalgia.
Hey! The 80s were so happy!
But it's like
Reagan!
Yeah, Reaganomics, and we were, Russia, and bombs, and Oliver North, and oh man, the 80s were scary politically though, and we could,
I'm kind of glad that way the only way I have to experience the 80s is through these movies. That
totally. No, it was an interesting time.
When my mom talks about hiding under desks to like during the Cuban Missile Crisis, it's like, Columbine was scary and shit, but I don't think we had anything that was like as scary as we're waiting for nukes to land any second.
Cover your face, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We hope that you will come down and see these movies that we're going to play
and be happy
in the alleyway. Again, it's going to be The Goonies already happened, but Stand By Me, Dirty Dancing, E.T., and I'm forgetting one, but it's on the list. Make sure to go to tinpantheater.com and you can see the link to the eventive schedule of all our upcoming movies, and you can see everything that's playing. And we even have an 80s themed movie that we're playing at Tin Pan right now that Jared and I have both seen.
Yeah, we have.
It's called The Summer of '85.
Julie's seen it too.
I have seen it.
Oh, wonderful,
yep,
wonderful.
I have seen it.
This movie's been playing for about a week now, but we really want to encourage you to come out and see it. We've got a couple of movies opening this Friday as well, but Summer of '85 is still playing. It's kind of a good classic Tin Pan movie. It's French. It's nostalgic. It's sexy. It's a love story. Also, because it's French, there's a lot of existentialism about death and life.
There really is.
It's very uncomfortable.
It's like one scene will be like a finger in slow motion tracing up a butt crack, and then it'll be like 90 seconds of existential dread,
Yeah.
followed by
yeah.
like a really great Rod Stewart song. Like it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, let's just start with French films in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just something about French films.
It is a reoccurring thing that you'll find in any cinema like ours, where you're gonna get a couple of French films every year, and I feel like if you're a fan of indie cinema, you do like to come out to see like what's this new French film
and the
that's
French,
playing?
and the French are
yeah.
like, here's our films for the year, and it's premiering at Cannes or Sundance or whatever, and we don't care if you don't like it.
Yeah.
It's
Shut
French,
up.
and we don't
Shut
care.
up.
Just like our food and our wine, and
Yeah.
we don't care because it's the best in the world.
Yeah.
I'm the time.
Right. Well, Summer of '85 is interesting too because it's directed by Francois Ozon, who like he's got this uncanny ability to make movies that should just be kind of normal dramas
Mhm.
that kind of tonally almost feel like thrillers, but almost feel like psychosexual, like he loves playing. His favorite theme is obsession. Like that is exactly what he plays with in almost every one of his films.
Yeah.
Not quite to the level of like an Aronofsky.
No,
obsession, but
That's a different level of
But let's
obsession.
face it, the French do try to pack it all
Oh, yeah.
into
They really do.
one,
They really
okay, in that 2 hours.
Yeah.
Horror, love, you know,
Yeah.
existentialism.
Right. And like if you watch the trailers for Summer of '85, it almost tries to make the film look like a little bit of a thriller.
It
a little bit. I mean, like
does,
the
for sure.
the way that like it's got the what's the song, like the first part of the trailer and the one that's on the intro.
Oh,
the Cure song.
Yeah,
that plays.
yeah.
That's the first part of the trailer, and then like the second song that plays with the trailer is very much like like violins and strings and
Because it gets
Yeah.
because it's building the suspense,
right,
you know,
But
and then
it feels very French to me that like, oh, now when someone has some internal storm brewing within them, like, and it feels again very very French.
Very.
it's so very French.
Yeah.
It's
It
was
one thing I will say I really liked about Summer of '85 is that there is a lot of detail in just like the south of France and like the beach, the sunshine.
yeah,
and, like,
I know.
People are like riding bikes and skateboards on the promenade.
Totally. And you're like, okay, where's your baguette?
Yeah.
You know,
but at the same
and,
time,
and a lot of smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
So many smoking of cigarettes.
Cigarette. Oh, God, yeah.
It was interesting to me though watching it because it did like we were just talking about how nostalgia can feel manufactured. This felt like it could have came out in 1985 and it wouldn't have really looked any differently.
Yeah, I mean,
It's shot on film.
Let's talk about the
Yeah.
aesthetic for a second.
Yeah.
So shot on film,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, and then so
Shot at 35.
35.
Yeah.
Okay.
See the grain for sure.
So is that a coming from a non-technical perspective? Is that those are specific lenses that they use?
It's the film's film stock more than anything.
Stock. Okay.
And really, I mean, I think the point is that if you're going to make a movie about, especially looking back through rose-colored glasses, like on a specific year, 1985, I think shooting on film makes it feel like a memory more than anything.
Right.
And like, whereas I feel like if it was shot on digital, I'd be like, I'm not sure what this world is where I could see the 80s in digital.
Yeah, this is
yeah.
this is way too clear. Yeah.
Okay. So that would mean it's probably pretty expensive to shoot then.
Probably,
I mean-
yeah. I've heard arguments that like these days that sometimes when filmmakers choose to shoot on film, they can sometimes make it cheaper.
Right.
I think there's an overwhelming assumption that film is more expensive, but I've heard that sometimes like you gotta know exactly how to like consolidate and just plan and schedule,
Okay.
and like it can sometimes still be
All right.
just as
Well,
cheap.
like you said, it looked summer of '85.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what France looked like at summer in '85, but I mean,
It probably looked like the same. Yeah. And again,
But
like,
I mean,
I also have this thought about like when I was taking French in high school, all of my textbooks were were all published at around like 89 or maybe 95 at the latest. And so my thought of like French culture is all just like 80s French culture, because I think that's like what a lot of teenagers in the 2000s, like that was the peak of French culture.
Yes.
Culture was the 80s
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like seeing this movie was like, oh yeah, this is the French culture that I was taught as a French student in high
this
school.
is dead on.
yeah. So I mean, beautiful scenery, beautiful colors, beautiful. And then, the language. I mean, Sam and I were talking earlier about how French is just so beautiful to listen to. You don't even care what they're saying.
One thing that's cool about this movie is like one of the characters is a British woman who is visiting during the time of the movie, and so it's very fun to kind of hear her French accent, and you can tell that she's not a native speaker.
Okay.
And I don't know, that's almost like a little detail that like I hear again because I did take French and
okay.
how. Whenever I was told like you need to work on your accent, it's like I hear what a British person speaking French sounds like.
And when she goes back and really quickly,
very quickly
from French to British,
to British,
to proper English. But you hear her when she speaks in English, you're like, oh, that's
very thick.
That's your real accent right there. Yeah.
So in one sentence, Jared, what is this movie about?
First love.
Yeah.
Young love, like the feeling where like you have it, and if it goes away, you'll never get it again.
Mm-hmm.
Did it make you uncomfortable, the relationship?
The only time I got really uncomfortable was in the third act, where the obsession became like, this could kill this kid. Like, this is getting very dangerous. But yeah, I mean, it was... It was a lot darker and a lot heavier than I expected the film to be, especially from the trailers. Like I expected something much more winsome, and it really was pretty freaking heavy.
I would agree with that. I can't help but think that part of this movie got made in the aftermath of Call Me by Your Name and the success of that film. Definitely not exactly the same thing, but there's definitely some similarities.
Definitely.
And I would agree that like I was surprised a little bit how dark it got. I was also surprised that there's quite a bit of non-linear storytelling in this movie.
Definitely, it was smartly done.
Yeah,
like that was some of the best. Not like the way that it would bounce between present and past.
Yeah,
was beautiful.
It was very cool. And I don't want to give any spoilers away because I do think this is a great movie to kind of go in not knowing much, but it's very fascinating how the beginning of the movie kind of tells you how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And it says like, hey, this is the inevitability. And so you're sort of watching it just knowing that eventually the stuff's going to go down. And it's a fascinating way.
And if you watch the trailer and then you start the film like I did, and then you're like, oh, this is going to be bad. I mean,
things
you
are going to go poorly.
It's going to be bad from the start.
And in a way, like it's kind of nice the fact that it is about. It's a summer romance, and so you get all that aesthetic pleasure of like the beach in southern France, while at the same time knowing that there's this existential dread hanging over.
And it's like good, and then it starts, and that's what a movie's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's a fun roller coaster.
Yeah, it really, and they rode a roller coaster, and I think that was very poignant. I think it was. It was very like
definitely cool shots of like the camera on the roller coaster.
And this is not going to end well. Yeah,
I do think like without spoilers or anything, but there is one sequence in the film that to me is probably the most pure cinematic sequence I've seen in a movie all year. Where I was watching it and I was like, theaters, cinema. like literally, it hit me so hard, and I was like, thank you, French.
God damn it,
thank
French
you, French
people. Yeah,
like it really hit me so hard.
They just
really did.
Why? They just know. I mean,
they still see themselves as the inventor of cinema.
They really do. Okay, so we were talking about the 80s and movies and stuff. Okay,
let's go back to 1905.
Well, let's do. And in I remember one of my very first film books, very first chapters, movie theaters back in the day when they were built and ready to show movies. They were the only places that had air conditioning.
Yes,
a lot of people didn't have air conditioning.
Okay, one of the most fascinating tidbits I once taught in the class was the fact that the early air conditioning were actually huge ice blocks.
Yes, they were.
And they would
huge.
have fans blowing the ice blocks.
Yes.
And people would get wet sometimes.
And people did not care what they were watching as long as they were sitting in front of that AC and they paid good money.
Yeah.
But the Lumiere brothers invented
they're usually credited with like being the first the ones who invented the first camera, like the first film camera. It's like the 1895.
And for you youngins, they had to
crank them.
Crank them. Okay, you had to crank them. Yeah, and think about that arm just like cranking that, because it's cranking the reel, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's going through, and I mean, oh man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can you imagine everybody having like one giant arm and one
Just be
tiny
like,
arm?
be like, yeah. I mean, and most of the time, I don't, who knows if there was directors of photography back then, really, it was mostly the director.
The one person with the camera was like, hey, just do that thing.
No time to like direct the actor. I mean, but
Right.
and also back then the actors were much more talented. So, and they weren't.
They were
there was no
theater
sound.
actors.
There was no sound.
Yeah.
So
a lot of like big.
yes,
Yeah.
so they had to be more dramatic because there was no sound yet, and so it was very. But I think the French just really think they invented.
Oh, totally,
films,
totally,
right?
and
Take credit.
over the decades, like I think there's this sense of like the French still think of themselves as sort of like the forefront of like what is possible with films in a lot of way, and like I think the fact that Cannes Film Festival is still like the biggest film festival in the world, like, has
the
a lot
most
to do with that.
exclusive, right?
Yeah.
So if you win at Cannes, you win everything.
Yeah, you're kind of you're
it's,
good.
It's the good
It's
stuff.
not an attitude. Maybe it is. I think the French in general feel that they are number one in a lot of things.
I think for me, the thing that I don't necessarily think gives them the edge over us or anything, but like the French New Wave really changed how American movies were made.
Yeah.
Forever.
I mean, it's so interesting
Like,
too, because the French New Wave was inspired by Hollywood cinema, but they took just the parts of Hollywood cinema that they liked, and then just kind of like remixed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then the Hollywood New Wave then took inspiration from the French New Wave. So it's this interesting cyclical.
Yeah. Like if you watch the 400 Blows, and then you watch like
Easy Rider or something.
Yeah, or like an early Cassavetes.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, this is the snake swallowing its own tail a little bit, but
especially because like in Breathless, like there's all these references to like Humphrey Bogart and all this classic stuff. Yeah, and then you realize that like, oh, but the rhythm of this is like jazz, whereas like the Hollywood cinema of the 40s and 50s was very like stoic and stuffy, whereas like French
big band.
Yeah. Whereas like French New Wave is like beatnik, and like it's like we're gonna throw this whole thing out the window.
And there's just everything though. There really is. And don't get me wrong. Like I've been to France, okay, and like it is everything that they say it is. Although and they say, oh, French people are rude and blah blah. They really weren't. They were actually very, very nice. And they every night they light up the Eiffel Tower. Of course, I saw people like kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. I was like, of course,
gotta take your chances.
The food, everything, But really, there's so much. I mean, you could go back and look at French films in general, and you could say, okay, there is everything. Amélie, one of my favorite movies.
It's a great film, hands down. Pierre Jeunet, love that guy.
Yeah. La Vie en Rose. That's that's kind of newer, but there's just so many films that I love. We never got to show the new Les Miserables.
Oh,
remember?
Because that was right when COVID hit, and like we were just about to open. Yeah, Lodge Lee's. Les Miserables.
We kept playing the trailer.
I know, right?
Oh, the non-musical one.
Yeah, the one that is not based off of.
God, that one I still haven't seen that.
We wanted to. We were going to open. We were going to open.
We were going to. Yeah, it was again. This usually sometimes we say, oh, we were hoping to, but we just didn't get to it. There was actually a global pandemic that stopped us this time.
There really was. We were like, no. Yeah, but
all right. So, I do want to recommend everyone, if you like French films, if you like especially modern international cinema, I think Summer of '85 is a really great movie to see. If you liked Call Me by Your Name, I would highly recommend you come see this movie. I know our friends at Out Central Oregon are helping us promote this movie right now because it is definitely a LGBTQ movie. And if you just want to enjoy the south of France in the summer, I think it's a good movie.
Even if you don't care about the story whatsoever, just getting a little 90-minute trip to the south of France and some air conditioning, like
really, because I don't even know France if we're able to travel to France right now. I don't think
so. This
we
is
are
your
still.
chance to do it.
This is really your chance. Yeah. I thought it was this did not go to Cannes. This film. Because
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of their awards and nominations right now, but it's a great film for the summer. It really is. I'm surprised at the name actually, Summer of '85. I think I would have thought of some other titles for it.
Right.
Yeah. What's
Um,
interesting is
but-
that it's actually based off of a British book, and so the story is transferred to France.
Okay.
But it's originally an English writer who wrote the story.
Okay.
And again, I would also say go into this movie knowing that you're going to get a little bit, French existentialism. I think if you know that you like French movies, recommend it. If it's not your thing, I'm not going to force anyone to come see this movie.
And if you like Rod Stewart,
Yeah.
it is the best.
And The Cure.
Yeah,
And
the-
just,
but
there's
it
a
was-
great 80s soundtrack.
It
here.
really is a great soundtrack, and it's not complete. Like when you hear needle drops in '80s movies, they're usually like, "Oh, of course you chose that one." But there's a few like deep cuts
These are the
on
deeper
there,
cuts,
yeah,
yeah,
where you're
yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yeah, the
That was
needle drops in
good.
this movie
Yeah.
are really good. Like
Yeah.
I especially like the first time, like they break the fourth wall within like the first 10 minutes. He looks down the barrel of the camera, says a line, needle drop, credits roll. Like,
Yeah.
this movie's got energy.
Yeah. And we were talking about '80s nostalgia,
Mhm.
right? We could do a whole subject on '80s music.
definitely."
Okay.
But we're not going to. So we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah.
But this has it all. This
Mhm.
movie has it all.
It really
so
does. It
and
really
music,
does.
it has it
Uh,
all.
Before we finish, I do want to mention we got a couple of movies opening this Friday. Hopefully the episode is out already on Friday, July 9th. We have Undina, a new German film from the same director of Phoenix and Transit. I know Transit was quite a bit of a hit. Same actors are in this movie.
A lot of
Based off of a German folktale that's sort of translated into modern day. So yeah, romance, drama, folktale, little bit of fantasy. I'm very curious to see what this movie's like. We're also opening up Werewolves Within.
Oh, God.
Very
Oh,
excited
gosh.
about. It's going to be our first late night movie. It's gonna play at 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. There's also going to be a 7 o'clock showing on Monday. So if you can't make the late one, we got an evening showing on Monday the 12th. Werewolves Within looks very funny. Looks like a great horror comedy. A lot of great sort of like comedians in it. Like
Yeah,
not a
big
lot of
time.
like big names, but like those like supporting players who are just very funny. Like all fill out this.
You'll
ensemble
recognize everyone that's in the movie
You
without
just don't know their names.
necessarily knowing what you recognize them from.
Yeah.
They're all. I've watched it twice now, and it's honestly just front to back, just a damn delight.
I'm
That
so
movie.
excited
It's
for it.
so much fun.
Great.
So that's going to be a horror comedy, which we're really happy to play this movie. There's also going to be a few more showings of Dream Horse and Truffle Hunters at the latter part of the week. So if you haven't caught those movies, catch them before they leave. We're trying to, slowly move them out as we bring in new movies, but we know that folks are really still enjoying those movies, so we want to keep a few screenings around while we still got it.
Would it be hurtful of us to say that we're because we keep slowly making the amount of showings of Truffle Hunters and
Smaller and smaller.
smaller and smaller? Like, are we trying to wean our audience off of
Yeah.
these movies?
Yeah.
Because like literally we can't get rid of it because every time we're like, okay, we're gonna close it this week, done, wash our hands of it. It's like, oh no, we just sold 30 tickets.
Yeah.
So,
It's like people just want to get back in the theaters. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
were really. I mean, think about a couple weeks ago, even when people were still pretty apprehensive.
Yeah.
we were
Okay.
we were stoked if we
You
got
know,
6 or 7
Exactly,
people in a
and even
theater.
then,
Yeah.
when there was a ton of people who had definitely had their second vaccination
yeah.
by then, by
Yeah.
April, by May, whatever,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was like still not.
Mhm.
And then now, boom,
Yeah.
Just overnight.
We're there.
Literally overnight.
It's
30th hit and then boom.
yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. Also, we have we're doing a new series Inside on Thursday nights. We're doing a Janus Film, classic art house film series, where we're going to be showing movies from the Janus Film Library. We're starting with Yojimbo, which again would have played last night. This movie comes out on Friday, but we're going to play it again next Thursday.
Woo!
So we're going to do 2 Thursdays in a row. Will be the same film. And these will be sort of your classic art house canon films. And we're excited to be starting with Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo, which is a classic samurai movie that was later remade as Fistful of Dollars. And then we're also going to play its sequel, Sanjuro, the Thursdays after that, which
All right.
is going to be really
Woohoo.
fun. And we also still doing Takeout Tuesdays on Tuesday nights. We have a theme of classic romantic comedies for the month of July. Coming up is going to be His Girl Friday, followed by Cyrano de Bergerac, and then Charade after that. And then, of course, we also have our Out in Focus series on the Wednesdays that we're not doing the 80s movies, where we're showing classic movies from the queer canon, so classic LGBTQ movies, and that's in collaboration with Out Central Oregon, which we appreciate their support so much. So yeah, please come down to Tin Pan and see what we got in our schedule. We appreciate you coming. Is that everything?
That's everything.
That's everything.
Can we just say I feel like booking, but I'm a cheerleader might be the most proud thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank
honestly.
you.
That'll be in your obituary.
Seriously, like one time he books, but I'm a cheerleader.
But I'm a cheerleader,
Yeah.
Which it might be one of the greatest of the queer cinema.
Yeah,
Really?
ever.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a great film.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it.
All right, I'm excited for everything we got coming up.
It's a lot of
it's-
shit. Like
yeah.
It's
like
a lot.
like
you
a
know,
couple
it's
months
lot.
ago, we were like, we've got this one documentary
Well-
and then another.
Oh,
but
also,
now we
we're-
actually
we're-
have
yeah.
amazing stuff coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna play Zola. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
really looking forward to that.
And-
We're gonna play it.
And in August, if not earlier, we're gonna play The Green
Green
Knight.
Knight. Woo! Can't wait.
It's gonna be so good.
Yeah. That will definitely be a podcast.
Oh
so,
yeah, we're gonna
Oh,
do
yeah.
we're
like
gonna
2
podcast
episodes
the
on
hell
that.
out of that one.
We should
Green Knight
we
Part
should
1,
podcast
Green
the
Knight
hell
Part
out of
2.
Zola too, right?
Oh yeah. We'll do that as well.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Really appreciate it. We'll talk again in 2 weeks, something like that. All right.
Perfect.
This is Tin Pan Podcast from
Yeah.
BendFilm and Tin Pan
Tin
Theater,
Pan Podcast.
recorded at a Tin Pan Theater in Bend, Oregon.
No longer Small Town Film
Oh,
Ghosts.
no.
No.
Bye-bye, ghosts.
The artist
Ghosts-
formerly
the
known
ghosts
as
are gone.
Small Town Film
Yes.
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you, as our audience, want to call yourself the Small Town Film Ghost, you can take that.
Yeah, we'll take it.
All right. My name is Todd Leiser.
Jared Rassick.
Chick on Flick, Julie Furnace.
Yeah, you are.
All right. Talk to you next time.
Bye bye.